All right, UFC Fight Night, Moicano versus Duncan, full card predictions. Pardon me if the audio quality is not great. I'm on a new phone, and I don't know if this phone is a good, microphone or not. So we'll see. But yeah, we'll go early prelim opener to main event. First fight of the card is Dakota Hope versus Kai Kamaka III. I'm gonna go Kai Kamaka III. He's just got a bit better of competition. He's fought a couple decent PFL fighters. He's fought a decent amount of solid prospects. 17-7-1 is not a very clean record, especially when you look at Dakota Hope being 11-1. But I would say Kai's a lot more experienced when it comes to this level of fighter. He's looked pretty good recently. He's also been really active. Dakota Hope has been similarly active, but just not against nearly as the level of competition. You might see that Kai Kamaka lost to Diego Brandao by a split decision in the last year, which is not the best look, but most people know Diego Brandao is the guy who lost to McGregor 12 years ago. But if you've been watching his fights recently, if you know ball, you'll know that he's been rocking the Alex Pereira custom shorts, like the UFC branded ones that say Pereira on them, and he's been kind of whooping some people in Tough Enough. He's been looking pretty good. He's looked much better than he did at the tail end of his UFC career, and he's got a wheel kick finish. He's beating some people up, so I don't hate a loss to him so much, especially that it wasn't a blowout, he didn't get whooped by him or finished. And then his last loss was to Brendan Lofton, who's definitely a UFC level PFL fighter. So yeah, solid fighter. I'm gonna go with Kai Kamaka. I don't know if you heard my notification sound go off. Kind of threw me off for a second. Let me mute that. It's incredibly unprofessional by me. Next up the card, Dione Barbosa versus Melissa Gatto. I think both these fighters are about the same level of fighter. Kind of mixed results, a couple bad decisions maybe, a couple weird fights. Melissa Gatto, her last win was against Tamires Vidal, which was 2 years ago. It was also her last fight. And she got a win by punching Tamires Vidal in the boob. And then the ref stopped the fight like it was, Tamires Vidal tried to stop the fight like it was an illegal strike. And I guess the ref didn't think it was an illegal strike. I don't even know if it is, I guess. The ref called off the fight like it was a DKO. And that's Melissa Gatto's most recent win. It's only win in the last 4 years. And I think just because of that, and also she's going to be a striker going against a grappler. Generally, the grappler wins those just because you don't really have to be that good of a grappler to make that your whole game plan. Whereas if you're a striker, you really have to work around a lot of grappling. So yeah, if you want to impose your will, a grappler is a much better base to have, and I think that's just going to make it more easy for Barbosa to win, even though Gatto might be a little bit better of a fighter. It's also hard to know. Gatto hasn't fought at all recently, and her last 3 fights, she's lost 2 of them, and one of them she won by a boot punch against a not very good fighter. So I don't know what to make of her. I think Dione Barbosa is a little more proven. Her last fight against Karine Silva, she arguably should have won that fight, but I don't know. I think she'll probably win this one. Next up the card, Azamat Bekoev versus Tresean Gore. I'm going Bekoev. Tresean Gore, I think, is solid. He's looked better in his last few, or maybe not his last fight. He looked pretty shitty against Rodolfo Vieira, but he looked good against Marco Tulio. He was definitely game. He was getting whooped, but he was landing some good strikes, throwing with conviction. His chin looked good, but he took a lot of damage in that fight, and in other performances in his career against anyone but Antonio Tricoli, he's looked pretty shit. He's just not. It's middleweight. This is a level of fighter that would not survive at welterweight. That would not survive, I guess, other than Alex Morono and Nico Price and Michael Chiesa and Max Griffin and all those guys. But other than people that are around because of their seniority, Tresean Gore would not survive at welterweight or lightweight or featherweight. Any of these weight classes with a deep skill pool, unlike middleweight where you get a lot of shitty prospects. Bekoev did lose to Yuri Belgarwi in his last fight, and he did kind of get his ass kicked, but Belgarwi looked really good last week against Mansour Abdul Malik, who's much better than Tresean Gore. So it's not I'm going to MMA math my way into picking Tresean Gore. I'm just going to pick Bekoev. I think he's good. He's well-rounded. He could probably out-grapple Tresean Gore. He could probably finish him on the feet. So I'm going to go with Bekoev. And honestly, Bekoev is he's a little bit less dynamic, or I'd say he's a lot less dynamic than Marco Tulio, but when it comes to the build and the striking ability and the power and the speed and all that stuff, he's pretty similar to Marco Tulio. So if he has a similar performance where it's just it's kind of like a prolonged finish on the feet where Tresean Gore is throwing back, but for the most part, he's not dodging a ton of punches, he's not blocking a ton of strikes, he's kind of getting beat up, and then he gets dropped a couple times and the ref steps in, even though Gore could finish, but he's taking a lot of damage. So I think that's probably what this fight's going to look like. Maybe a first-round finish for Bekoev. Next up the card, Hailey Cowan, or Cowan, or however you pronounce it, versus Alice Pereira. Alice Pereira, not related to Alex Pereira, despite the similarity in name and the fact that Alex Pereira does have a decent MMA fighter sister. But yeah, Alice Pereira was a solid prospect from the UFC. She's pretty big. She seemed like she had decent finishing potential for a women's fighter. However, she can't grapple to save her fucking life. She got out-grappled very easily by Montserrat Rendon, or Rendon. I guess she's Mexican, not Brazilian, so maybe it is Rendon. And Rendon, or whatever her name is not that good at grappling, not like an exceptional fighter. And it was kind of like Rebels to Spain versus Waldo Cortez Acosta, where it's as soon as Waldo Cortez Acosta found out he could out-grapple Despain didn't have 1 second of success after that in the fight. And I think that's what this fight's going to look like. It was Montserrat Rendon was sort of the Waldo Cortez Acosta of that fight, whereas I think Hailey Cowan is going to be the Austin Lane of Rebellious to Spain. Or what Austin Lane is to Rebellious to Spain, Hailey Cowan will be to Alice Pereira, which is much worse than their original opponent, but now Hailey Cowan knows that Alice Pereira can't stop a takedown and can't get up to save her life if she gets taken down. So Hailey Cowan doesn't need to be a good fighter to win this fight. She just needs to shoot a takedown. And if she can just shoot a takedown, she can win. And the reason why I think she'll shoot a takedown is because her most recent finish was by rear naked choke. And a couple times I'll just have that as my factor as if I will pick someone or not. If they just have one submission in their career, I think they're good enough to out-grapple Alice Pereira. So I'm going to pick Hailey Cowan, even though this fight is probably going to suck, and Hailey Cowan is really bad. Not like attractive, she's really bad at fighting. So I'm going to go with her, but I guess Pereira could win it if Cowan can't get a takedown. But that would shock me because Pereira looked so bad at stopping takedowns in her first fight. So I'm going to go with Cowan, or Cowan, or whatever. Next up the card, Jesus Christ, did they rebook this? Lando Vannata versus Darrius Flowers. I mean, who gives a shit about this fight? I think this was supposed to happen a few weeks ago, and it got rebooked. I could be wrong. I'm going Lando Vannata. Darrius Flowers is not very good. He's 0-3 in his last, or he's 0-3 in the UFC, and he's not, sort of elderly, like. He breeds like the kind of fighter that would have gotten signed in 2014 and then just kind of stuck around and been inactive, especially when you look at his record being 12-8-1. But he did get to the UFC from the Contender Series not that long ago, less than, what was it, like 3.5 years ago. And he kind of got like a fluke slam where he slammed the guy, and the guy looked like he was good to continue, and then he's like, oh fuck, I separated my shoulder, and they called the fight off. But I think he was a pretty big underdog in that fight, and the guy he beat isn't that good. And then since then, he lost to Jake Matthews. He lost to Michael Johnson, and then he lost to fucking Evan Elder, I think. Lando Vannata hasn't had the best recent UFC run. He hasn't been super active. His last loss was 3 years ago to Zell Huber, which isn't a good look because Zell Huber's aged pretty poorly. He had the loss to Charles Jourdain where he got stuck in the guillotine, and as he was in the guillotine, he tried to pop out, and the way that Jourdain had his legs wrapped around him, it made Vannata's shorts get pulled around his ankles. So he got submitted by a guillotine, and then as he was getting up, his pants around his ankles, and it was pretty pathetic. But I'll go with Vannata. I just think he's always been the better fighter. He looked pretty good, against Tony Ferguson and a couple of his earlier fights. I don't think he looked bad against Charles Jourdain until the guillotine. He was, grappling pretty easily. He got a takedown before that, where Charles Jourdain pulled the guillotine. He was implementing a game plan pretty well. That was a while ago, but Charles Jourdain is, I think, as good now as he was then. Maybe a little bit better, but that's not a terrible loss. And then Vannata's, beaten a couple of the worst. He beat Mike Grundy, Yancy Medeiros, some of the guys who don't necessarily belong in the UFC. He's able to, have his way with them. And I think he'll be able to do it to Darrius Flowers, who's just never been really UFC level. And I don't know that Lando Vannata's game is a game that's going to age super poorly. He doesn't take a ton of damage in his fights. He doesn't rely on speed or power. He's just a pretty solid technical striker. And I don't know if Darrius Flowers has an answer for that. So I'm going to pick Lando Vannata. Next fight of the card, Alessandro Costa versus Stewart Nicoll. Now, Stewart Nicoll is a plus 325 underdog, and I'm going to pick him. First of all, he's an Australian fighter. I mean, they should put him on an Australia card. Maybe I get that he's not very good, so I don't want to put him on a pay-per-view or a named fight night card because it might be a waste of a spot. But they're probably going to put fucking Junior Tafa versus Austin Lane or something on the next card. So why not put this fight on it, which would be probably a pretty good fight. Yeah, I'm going to pick Stewart Nicoll. Honestly, I don't think he's that bad. I think he's gotten pretty underrated. The guy he lost to, Lucas Rocha, I think is a pretty solid fighter, better than Alessandro Costa, and I thought he looked pretty good in that fight. Even though he lost, he did clearly lose a fight, but he looked solid, and he's a little bit more well-rounded, which I think is going to help him in this matchup. And then Jesus Aguilar, you got him in a guillotine. It's hard to know how good he is based on those two fights, but I thought he looked pretty good before the UFC. He's a pretty solid, well-rounded guy. I don't know what gym he's at, but it might be better than, wherever Alessandro Costa trains out of. And Alessandro Costa, I haven't been that impressed with him in the UFC. He beat Kevin Borjas, but Kevin Borjas is 1-4 in the UFC, so it's not like crazy. He just got signed to fight Douglas Lima, that's crazy. He looked solid against Steve Erceg, but other fighters who aren't very good have done that. We saw Ode Osborne look pretty solid against Steve Erceg, and then he just lost to Olivia Diras. And I guess Olivia Diras did test positive for steroids, but Ode Osborne is not like the greatest fighter. And Erceg doesn't have a great style for like dominating fights unless he gets a finish early against a guy like Matt Schnell who's finishable, or if he's able to easily out-grapple someone. It's going to be hard for Steve Erceg to dominate someone who's well-rounded. So I don't hate the fact that, or I don't think it's like very clear that he's good just because he had a close fight with Erceg. And then like Alessandro Costa hasn't had any other really great performances other than like he got finished on the feet by Amir Albazi, Alden Correa finished him and like had his way with him, and Alden Correa didn't finish Louis Garul, who's not very good. It would probably be even odds with Stewart Nicoll, maybe a slight favorite. So I think Stewart Nicoll's actually pretty solid. I think he's a little underrated. He's good. He's well-rounded. And Alessandro Costa is not having, like Amir Albazi is a grappler, and he knocked out Alessandro Costa. Alden Correa like easily outstruck Alessandro Costa. I don't think he's that good, and I don't really understand why he's such a big favorite. So I'm gonna pick Stewart Nicoll, despite the fact that he's such a big underdog, and I'm just gonna ride with it. I guess I don't know if that's the most confident pick you've ever heard, but I'll pick Stewart Nicoll even though he's an underdog. Next up the card, Thomas Petersen versus Guilherme Pat. I'm gonna go Thomas Petersen. Guilherme Pat I think is fine, but he's not that good. And he's a heavyweight, and a lot of times heavyweights before they make it to the UFC, they might look better than they are. And Guilherme Pat didn't look that good before he was in the UFC. He looked good before he was on the Contender Series, but against Alan Fry, he looked like kind of a fat bum, and he couldn't get the finish. And Alan Fry is not that good of a fighter, so I don't love that. Especially when you consider the fact that Thomas Petersen was beating Vitor Petrino up 2-0 before he got the finish. I actually think Vitor Petrino's pretty solid. Like, he was good at 205. He finished Modestas Bukauskas, and then he went up to heavyweight where the competition's a lot lower. And Thomas Petersen was up 2 rounds to him, arguably. It was a close fight, but I had Thomas Petersen up 2 rounds with Petrino maybe needing a finish. And Petrino was able to finish him, but if Thomas Petersen goes up 2-0 on Guilherme Pat, who's probably worse than Vitor Petrino, Guilherme Pat couldn't finish Alan Fry in a fight he was winning. So if he's losing against Thomas Petersen, I don't think he's going to be able to pull out a finish. And I think that's going to be what he needs to do. I mean, kind of the same thing with Shamil Gaziev. I think that was like early on in the fight, but Thomas Petersen was winning the moments before Gaziev finished him. So I think he's a guy, if you don't finish, he's going to be like crafty enough at heavyweight to beat guys who can't finish him. And I don't think Pat's going to finish him because he couldn't finish fucking Alan Fry. So I'm going to go with Thomas Petersen. Next up the card, onto the main card, we've got Robert Ruchala, who's 0-1 in the UFC, versus Jose Delano, who hasn't fought in the UFC. Just a great matchmaking for a main card. This card sucks, by the way, if you couldn't tell. There's a couple decent fights on it, with some decent prospects, but there's also like a lot of slop. I don't know. This fight is actually not bad. Robert Ruchala is a pretty entertaining fighter. He looks solid against William Gomez, but he got pretty easily outclassed. And then he's lost to Saudi and Parnas before. There's one guy he fought like 1 billion times, right? What's his name? I don't know. I can't figure it out. I'm pretty sure Ruchala fought a guy. Or maybe I'm thinking of Wicklacz. I don't know. Yeah, Ruchala's a decent prospect. He's out of KSW. He didn't beat anyone great, but his only losses were to Parnas and I think one other guy who's pretty solid. And then, his only loss to William Gomez, who also lost to Saudi Parnas. So no bad losses for Ruchala, but Jose Delano I think is like a much better prospect. Especially considering that he didn't lose to William Gomez yet. He fought a couple pretty decent guys at LFA, looked pretty good. He looked pretty good in the Contender Series. Didn't get the finish, but he looked solid enough to get signed, which was pretty rare for last season. Most of the people that got signed without a finish last season had like a complete war, like John Pork, the guy that lost to John Pork got signed. Actually, a couple people that had a war didn't even get signed. So it was mostly people that got finishes. So him getting signed without a finish is pretty impressive. And yeah, I think he beats Rob Ruchala, who's not very good. I don't have a ton more to say about it. His most recent loss was to Gabriel Santos. And Gabriel Santos is a very good fighter who arguably beat Lerone Murphy. Beat Lerone Murphy clearer than Movsarevalo did, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm going to go with Delano. I think he gets it done probably by decision because you couldn't finish the guy in contender series. I don't think he's going to finish Ruchala. One thing that makes me want to pick against Ruchala is generally when I've been using the philosophy of William Gomez is not very good in my picks, those picks are generally correct. So if I think that William Gomez is not very good, the most reasonable conclusion is that Ruchala is not very good for losing to him, and therefore Delano's going to beat him, so I'm going to pick Delano. Next fight of the card, Tommy McMillen versus Manolo Zecchini. I'm going to pick McMillen. I don't think McMillen's that good. The guy he beat on the Contender Series, David Mgoyan, is a pretty solid fighter. He's going to fight on the White House card, but he's not very proven, and McMillen beat him while looking very sloppy, and it was a kind of weird decision. Mgoyan, I thought, pretty clearly won the first 2 rounds. Maybe the second round was closer than I remember. But Mgoyan was, I think, up 2-0 and then got 10-8'd because he gassed in the third. And McMillen just had more dog. But he looked really sloppy, which makes me think that Mgoyan is probably just not that good. He might just be unproven and bad, which is the thing that happens sometimes. We'll see with his fight on the White House card. But I'm going to pick McMillen, even though I thought he might not be very good, because Zecchini is much worse, and he's a striker. It's not like he's going to fraud check his grappling. Zecchini, super inactive, got finished by Morgan Charrier on the 2023 Paris card, which was like 2.5 years ago. So he hasn't fought since then. He got finished against Charrier. That loss hasn't aged super well. Charrier hasn't looked great in his recent fights. He finished Nate Landwehr, but he didn't look very technical doing it, and he just easily outclassed and finished Zecchini, which is not a very good look. And then Zecchini doesn't really have some great regional career to back up that one loss he had. He's 11-4. One of those losses in the UFC, 3 of them are against not very good fighters. And he's a striker. Like I said, he's not going to easily out-grapple or fraud check McMillen. So I'm going to go with McMillen. Minus 1,300 is a little bit crazy. I get he's out of that, what do they call it? MMA lab with O'Malley and, what's his name? Bautista and Jose Delgado's there, and the guy that Tim Welch, the O'Malley trains with. So he's at a good gym. I get why he's a favorite in a pretty big one, but I don't think he should be this big of a favorite, just because I don't think he's that good. He's just sloppy, and the only guy he's beaten who is pretty unproven. So I'll go with McMillen, but we'll see. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised about how not good he looks in this fight, unless he gets a finish really early on. Next fight of the card, Rafael Estevam versus Ethyn Ewing. I'm going to go Ethyn Ewing. Estevam missed weight, which generally is a reason to pick against someone, but he's missed weight in like 3 of his 4 fights in the UFC, and he's won every fight he's had. His fights are definitely getting closer. What fight did he have? Oh, no, I'm trying to think of someone else. Estevam's solid. He's kind of a decision merchant. He's kind of boring, but he's got wins against Charles Johnson, who's pretty solid. Felipe Boons, who's a decent guy. He's tall. He's kind of weird. Hayes Aguilar is also pretty solid. So Estevam's beating decent guys. But because of his weight missing problem, he got moved up to bantamweight. Then he missed weight again. So I think that's a bit bigger of a deal, missing weight up a weight class. And I also think he's going to struggle with the size. He did beat Felipe Bunes, who is a big flyweight, but he's more tall and lanky, and because of that, Estevam was able to muscle him around a bit. But Ethyn Ewing is smaller, or he's shorter than Estevam, but he's a lot denser, and he's a lot stronger. So I think he's going to have an easier job, like not getting muscled around. And he's got a lot of good power and good counters, which I think is going to be a surprise to Estevam, who's been dealing with flyweights his whole career that can't hit very hard, whereas Ethyn Ewing, he can scrap. So because of that, I think Ewing is going to be able to stuff the takedowns and win a lot of the exchanges on the feet, which I just think is going to give him the win. I think he's going to get out to an early lead, maybe like a knockdown in the first round or something like that, and then maybe win the second round and then lose the third. I think it's just going to be a close decision that Ewing's going to be favored in, just because of the size. Estevam is not like a super technical flyweight. He's pretty technical, but he's not like some of the, like Pantoja, where he's like a specialist. I think he's been able to get away with like not being super technical by just being a flyweight who's willing to be boring, which is pretty rare. And because of that, he can hold down the lighter guys and muscle down the weaker guys. I just don't think he's going to do that at bantamweight. And because of that, I'm going to pick Ethyn Ewing, who I think is pretty good. Like, he looked insanely good against Wellmaker on super short notice. He looked good in his fight before that. So I'm going to go with Ewing. I think he's going to be a good prospect. And Estevam is just not going to be that good at bantamweight in my headcanon. So I'll go with Ethyn Ewing. Featured fight, we've got Abdul Rahman Yakhyaev versus Brandon Ribeiro. I'm going to go Abdul Rahman Yakhyaev. I feel like I don't need to explain myself. Honestly, Brandon Ribeiro isn't that bad. I swear to God, he got cut from the UFC and fought a fight or two in karate combat, but apparently he didn't. I must be thinking of someone else. But yeah, he got finished by Azamat Mirzakhanov. He got finished by Umar Sy. He got finished by Zhang Mingyang. And these are decent fighters, but the fact that he's getting finished by them, when we've seen a lot of these fighters like struggle kind of recently, other than Mirzakhanov, but we've seen Umar Sy just got finished by Jan Kutalaba. What's his name? Mingyang got finished by Johnny Walker. So we know that the guys that Ribeiro's getting finished by are not that good. And I think Yakhyaev is, I mean, he's probably not, or we don't know that he's good as Mirzakhanov or Mingyang Zhang or anyone like that. But we do know that he is a pretty good finisher, and I think he's going to be able to finish Ribeiro in the same way that Zhang Mingyang and Azamat Mirzakhanov could. Just being heavy-handed early on, having a good submission threat. Umar Sy was able to take his back and finish him from there. I could see Yakhyaev doing the same thing because that's how he won his last fight. So I think this should be a pretty easy win for Yakhyaev, and then maybe we'll see him against someone who can fight at all, because that'd be cool. Because it's cool when you get a guy who can fight another guy who can fight. I think the UFC's kind of forgotten that, but it is sometimes pretty cool. So I'll go with Yakhyaev. Co-main event, we've got Virna Jandiroba versus Tabitha Ricci. This is my lock of the year. I'm going to pick Virna Jandiroba. I hate picking women's MMA fights. It seems like every time I'm confident, I'm wrong. And anytime I think I found like a hole in the odds, I'm wrong. But Jandiroba is actually good at fighting. She's a pretty good grappler. She can wrestle. She was able to take down Mackenzie Dern pretty easily. Mackenzie Dern's a pretty solid, one of the better women grapplers, of this generation. So I think that's pretty impressive. She wasn't able to get the win because she wasn't able to do a ton with wrestling because Dern was so good off her back. I guess that's why. I don't think Tabitha Ricci is going to be that good off her back. She's not that good on the feet. She lost clearly a decision to Yan Jordan, who's not very good on the feet. She's not terrible, but she's not great. She had a close fight with Angela Hill. Arguably she lost. She should have lost to Tisha. Is it Pennington now or is it Torres now? Tisha. Oh, I guess it's Raquel. Yes, Tisha Pennington. She lost to Lupita Godinez on the feet. I just don't think Tabitha Ricci's all that good. I guess she finished Amanda Ribas, but Amanda Ribas isn't that good, and that was kind of a fluke finish. Like she just elbowed her in the eye, and then Ribas couldn't continue because she basically got poked in the eye. So I'm going to pick Jandiroba by a very clear decision, or maybe a finish on the ground. And I think this is the odds-wise the lock of the year because for some reason Jandiroba is a minus 130 favorite. And if I were to make the odds of this fight, I would have put her at minus 350. I think. I just think she's so much better, and even if she's not able to get the fight to the ground, it's not like Tabitha Ricci is some savant at beating people on the feet. I guess she's dating Callum Walsh. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Callum Walsh really taught her the boxing way. He's a really good finisher, right? So maybe he taught her how to finish people. Probably not. So I'm going to go with Virna Jandiroba. Next up the card, main event, Renato Moicano versus Chris Duncan. I'm kind of torn on this because Moicano's been very inconsistent. Obviously, he lost Islam Makhachev. I'm not going to take much away from that. But the Beneil Dariush fight I don't love, especially because Beneil Dariush kind of has a similar game to Duncan. Definitely more grappling heavy, but that was a striking fight. And Beneil Dariush is a couple things. He's a hard body kick. He's a good 1-2. He's got heavy-handed hooks in the pocket. But he's not like that technical. He doesn't set up traps. He doesn't, do offensive counterpunching. There's a lot of stuff he doesn't do. Chris Duncan's kind of the same way. He's got a good 1-2. He's got a good body kick. He's got heavy hands in the pocket. He's got what you want. And that was enough for Dariush to beat Moicano, especially when you consider that Duncan is not nearly as chinny as Dariush. And I think he's got a little bit more pop, especially in those kicks, than Dariush does. Now, what complicates things is Moicano looked really bad against Dariush, who, like I said, has a similar game to Duncan. But another fighter who has kind of a similar game to Duncan, at least with like what weapons they have on the feet, is this guy Benoit Saint-Denis, who got fucking obliterated by Renato Moicano. Now, what gives me hope, and what's going to make me pick Duncan, is that Moicano 10-8'd Benoit Saint-Denis in the first round, and the damage that he did in the first round was enough to cause a doctor stoppage after the second round. But Moicano arguably lost the second round, just because on the feet he doesn't have a ton, and it's hard for him to like mount damage. So if he can't get the takedown, he's going to struggle. And I'm just going to trust that he can't get the takedown against Chris Duncan. I know he might be able to, but guys like Vucenic, I think Vucenic's actually pretty good. I think he's a pretty good grappler. He's really athletic. He's really fast. And Duncan was able to stop the takedowns there and beat up Vucenic on the feet. And then Vucenic shot a bad takedown, and Duncan submitted him with a guillotine. And Moicano is definitely a better grappler than Vucenic and definitely a better fighter. But is he, when he has these like such great lapses in athleticism and speed, I don't know if he's going to make up for the fact that he's like technically much better than Vucenic. So I think that Duncan's probably just going to beat him up on the feet, and Moicano's going to struggle to implement the grappling, and it's just going to be like a boring tit-for-tat sparring match. And one thing that supports that is they train together, and anytime there's a 5-round fight between fighters, and even a 3-round fight between fighters who train together, it's always a boring tit-for-tat striking match. They never go all out. They never try to finish each other. And if the fight stays in the feet for enough time, I think that Chris Duncan is just going to beat up Moicano's body, maybe finish him. Moicano got hurt to the body against Jalen Turner. He's been rocked on the feet by a bunch of fighters. He's not defensively super aware. So if he's going to be on the feet if you watch his last 5-round fight against RDA, who's got kind of a similar game to Chris Duncan. I think I called him Christian Leroy Duncan earlier. It's just the normal Chris Duncan. Yeah, RDA beat the fuck out of Moicano. Dominated him. So I'm gonna pick Chris Duncan. I've seen that game plan work so well against Moicano before that I feel like Duncan is not gonna struggle. So yeah. Again, pardon the audio if it's fucked up. I don't know how bad it's going to be. But yeah, let me know if you enjoyed the video. If you agree or disagree with my predictions, if you want to hear more about a certain pick. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'll be live tweeting the event. There's also a couple boxing matches this weekend. I think Fury Makhmudov is next weekend. Whatever. I'm going to pick Makhmudov. I'm going to pick Wilder over Chisora. I'm going to pick... I don't know what else. I'll pick Sky Nicholson, I guess. I think she's on this card. Or maybe she's not. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to pick those guys. Let me know if you agree or disagree with those. I'll be live tweeting all the events, all the fights tomorrow on Twitter. Link is in the description if you want to follow me. I'll have a recap of the fights tomorrow night. So if stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you want to see that. If you can watch my predictions and recaps going back to the beginning of last year, post on my channel with all that. Yeah, that is all. Thank you for listening. Again, pardon the audio if it's really bad. It could be crystal clear. And I sound like a moron right now, but I think I have an inkling that's going to be bad. So yeah, sorry about that.